All right, so now we kind of have some idea about styles of leadership. So now let's look at theories of leadership. All right, different theories about what makes a good leader. Okay, so there's been a lot of research on what makes an effective leader because, as you can imagine, a good leader can be the difference between the success and failure of a company. So we're going to talk in this section, this little chunk of video, about trait, behavior, and contingency theories, and then we'll leave contemporary theories for the next presentation. So starting with these three, trait and behavior theory. Trait and behavior theory kind of say there is a specific type of leader that is the best. Okay. The trait theories of leadership emerged just about the same time the trait theory of personality was just kicking in with Gordon Allport. So not a coincidence, okay? So the idea was, let's find the characteristics that make people good leaders. And so this is still done to this day. But the idea is we should give people personality tests and select people for leadership positions based on particular personality profiles, okay? And so think about, the big five personality characteristics. So the things that they emerged or thought was going to work was gender, dominance, intelligence, appearance, physical energy, need for power, need for achievement. I mean, all of these things. But then in 48, somebody put together, Stagdill, I like the name, went to all the different papers that had been published and was like, there's no consensus here. All of this paper says this, and this one says that, and that says that, but there's nothing is happening here. And so people stopped, looking at trait theory for a while, but came back to it in the 70s. Probably about the same time that the Myers-Briggs was starting to get real popular. Okay, that would be my guess on that one. And so there's this notion of the good man or good woman theory that these traits are the ones that we now believe. Intelligence. Yeah, we said that earlier, Leaders tend to be more intelligent. Dominance. Wow. That doesn't sound positive. Masculine. Yes, I'm sorry, ladies, but that is what comes out. All right? Masculine traits are what creates leadership. And so what happens is, these things, by the way, these things predict who will emerge as a leader and who is perceived to be a good leader, but not necessarily who is the best leader, if that makes any sense. Predicts who will become one, who people believe is one, but not necessarily who is one. So, there we go. Behavioral flexibility as a personality trait has been identified as a good feature in leader emergence. And that makes sense. You need to be flexible. You need to, reinvent every single time. Anyway, I had some more political diatribe I was going to go into. I decided not to, right? Because we're talking IO psychology. So the big five predict leadership emergence and leader effectiveness, conscientiousness, things of this nature. The big five traits, remember Ocean, by the way, just as a quick reminder: openness, conscientiousness, extroversion, A is something I don't remember, and neuroticism. What is A? Oh my God, I'm a terrible person. Okay, so what we find is that if you understand the big five personality traits, it can account for as much as 50% of explaining who does in fact emerge as leaders out of a group. Huh? So traits are somewhat predictive, but really, so what happened was there was this understanding that, okay, instead of trying to predict who would become a good leader, let's do this instead. Let's go and come to a consent. And I dig this. I'm a behaviorist, and I took the same approach a couple of years back. I was charged with the task of defining a critical thinking. And I was like, how the hell do you define critical thinking? So as a behaviorist, I said, how about we go and we identify those students that we believe are exhibiting critical thinking and then figure out what behaviors those are. Okay, and so that's the same idea. Let's go find a leader that is in fact effective and is getting the job done, and let's look at the behaviors that that leader exhibits. So what this implies is that you can train leadership, okay? You can bring just about anybody in and just teach them those specific behaviors that you have identified as being effective for leadership, and problem solved, okay? And so the behavior leadership theories actually said, found that there was two major dimensions of leader behavior: initiating structure and consideration. And so initiating structure is more like almost managerial kind of things, but like assigning specific tasks, planning ahead of time, telling the members what, so getting the job started, something like that, pushing the job. The consideration is like supportive behaviors that show concern and respect for subordinates. So, participative decision making, things of this nature. And so effective leaders emerge from these two main categories of behaviors. And so there it is. The leadership behavior description questionnaire will tell you what type of a leader you have. So we see that questions on consideration. So they ask this to an employee, right? My leader or boss is friendly or approachable, 1 to 5, right? And so clearly they're asking questions of consideration and initiating structure. And so we find that that leaders can be high on both, low on both, high on one, low on one. It's a mixed game. And so we find structure. Good leaders tend to be high on both, by the way. But take a look down here. If you exhibit too little or too much initiating, it can have negative job effects, right? If you don't provide enough initiating structure, people don't know what to do. If you provide too much, you're a micromanager, okay? So clearly you can be too high or too low on initiating. Consideration, however, is a strong predictor of things such as justice, perceived justice, counterproductive work behaviors, things of this nature. So clearly, both of these types of behaviors emerge, but yet still, both trait and behavior theories of leadership kind of imply that there is one best type of leader. And so instead, we've got these contingency theories. And the contingency theories have at their core, there is no one type of best leader, okay? It depends on the situation. It depends on the context, okay? And that seems clear to me. Certain leadership styles will work well in some places and not in others, okay? So we'll look at two main theories of contingency theories here. Fiedler's contingency theory, and where it's good leadership, effective leadership is a function of the characteristics of the leader and situational features. Got it? And the path-goal theory that basically says leaders are effective only to the degree that they use resources to help the subordinates in their environment. Okay? So we find where was it? Effectiveness depends on the extent. Yeah, I just read that. Okay. Leader character, 3 dimensions. Wait a minute. There we go. Situational favorability. There it is. Okay. 3 components or 3 dimensions of situational favorability. Okay. The extent to which the leader has a good relationship with the subordinates and the subordinates trust and respect the leader. The task structure is the amount in which the workers understand what they're supposed to do. Okay. And position power, like the 5 bases of power that we talked about earlier, is involved. And so then, where's my stuff? Where am I? I'm looking at the wrong ones. Okay. And so basically, it goes like this. Okay. This is kind of a bad scan. Yeah, I'm sorry. I made this scan a long time ago. And so what happens is you have to consider 3 different factors that we just said. The leader-member relations. They can either be high or low. Okay? The task structure can be either high or low. And the situational favorability, no, what's the last one here? Oh, I see. Position power can be either high or low. So based on these 3 dimensions, we find that 8 different what they call situational favorabilities can emerge. Okay, so it's a 2x2x2 if anybody knows their research design. But what we've got is this idea that there are 8 different possible situations that can emerge, and each one of these 8 has a very particular leadership style that would be most effective. Okay, so depending on which of these 8 outcomes, and these 8 outcomes are a product of the 2x2x2 up above. So 8 different situations, 8 different most effective leadership styles. So yeah, so what the leader orientation is it's a way to measure what type of leader you have, basically. And so they are going to ask the leader themselves, right, the boss or something, to answer these questions. Describe the worst coworker who you have ever worked with. And so from pleasant to unpleasant. Yeah, some people obviously, I don't like to work with unpleasant coworkers, but some people don't like to work with pleasant ones. What the hell do I know, okay? So what happens is if a leader describes low least preferred coworker, in other words, unpleasant, unfriendly, uncooperative, it's probably a task-oriented leader. But if they report high, then it's probably a person-oriented leader. And anyway, it's more details that we need. But the point is that this leader orientation is inherent in the leader. You can't change it. And so if you have the wrong leader orientation, you better be careful that you match it up to the right situational favorability, right? I mean, if you have the wrong type of leader in the wrong type of situation, it won't work. Okay? The path goal theory of leadership. Okay? There's 4 kinds of leadership behaviors. In fact, let me see the 4 kinds of leader behaviors. There you go. Directive leader behaviors. In other words, providing structure, clarifying goals, things of this nature. Achievement-oriented behaviors, where you reward, encourage performance excellence, reward outcomes. Supportive behaviors, where you focus on interpersonal relations and provide psychological and emotional support. Or participative, actively mentoring and coaching. And so what happens is that, here, this image. Okay, so what happens is the behaviors of the leader, okay, go into the subordinates or workers, subordinate, what a horrible phrase, okay, but what happens is that the effectiveness of these different types of behaviors, directive, achievement-oriented, supportive, and participative, is really a function of what they call moderators. You see the moderators up there. So if you want to understand the relationship between the first box in the bottom left and the box in the bottom middle, you have to consider those situational moderators, including, of course, environmental and subordinate characteristics. And so again, it's this idea that there is no best type of leader. There is no behavior that is always the most effective, because clearly, look at this, there's 4 different kinds of behaviors, and they have different varying degrees of success depending on situational moderators. All right, so we'll come on the next one and we'll start talking about more contemporary theories and more modern stuff.